What if what happened in Fatima 101 years ago was much more complex than any of us could have imagined? What if there was a fourth witness hidden away for decades, and through the detective work of researcher Fina Diarmata, this witness was discovered and interviewed? In that interview, the fourth witness described seeing a being with blonde hair floating in midair above the same tree that the apparition would later appear over. What if the so-called angel hair that fell over the crowd is also reported by witnesses who have had close encounters with UFOs today? Then there is the dull silver disc, which flew over the 80,000 people gathered at Fatima, which seemed to create chaos as car windshields exploded, hoods flew open, and gasoline spontaneously combusted. What if there was a picture taken 101 years ago that lay undiscovered in the Fatima archives until one man, Jose Machado, had access to it? What he found may be a smoking gun. Then there are the numerous reports of apparitions and so-called sun miracles. But what are these really? Could they be harbingers of deception? This is Fatima 2, Strange Phenomenon. I have to tell you, the first video on Fatima was great. The second was absolutely amazing. I have watched it twice, just gave it to my parents to watch today. The miracle of the sun I have seen with my own eyes. I remember the heat I felt. I remember the hair all over my body standing up. I remember the cloud that the sun seemed to come out of. The image I will never forget was when it went away. The darkest clouds I have ever seen to roll in with lightning. This happened in Falmouth, Kentucky around 1997. My whole family saw this. We have a video on VHS I'm going to find and send it to you. Keep up the great work. Okay, so why should you care? Why should we care? Why did I make the film? Because it's a warning. As a watchman, it's a warning. Because the UFO phenomenon is real, burgeoning, and not going away. The events at Fatima set a precedent which has continued into modernity. What I mean by that is simply this, that in Fatima, 101 years ago this October, something supernatural occurred. It has been, the phenomena has been managed and under basically to hold to a certain paradigm, and that's fine. But what if it's not that paradigm? What if something happened at Fatima which is not what we think it is? In other words, if it wasn't the sun, then what was it? And why do we hear over and over again witnesses looking up and seeing a dull silver disc? Well, it's 100 years ago. What does this have to do with me? It has everything to do with you. Why? Because it's happening right now in modernity, as I'll show you in just a few minutes. It's happening right now. And the fact that Fatima, and get this, the fact that Fatima has set a precedent to accept this as something benevolent and from the God of the Bible is the harbinger of deception. In other words, 101 years ago, this event was accepted. And now, decades later, when people see these things, like at the Coptic Church, and I'm going to roll the tape in a little bit, at the Coptic Church, you can see it for yourself. These are amorphous blobs of light. The sun is pulsing in other places. So what? We know that ancient goddesses had the ability to spin the sun. We are warned in the biblical prophetic narrative. We are warned that the dragon will come with all signs and lying wonders. We should heed that warning. And there's a lot of folks out there who don't want to touch this stuff. They don't want to look at it. They're afraid to look at it. So this is from a bus several weeks ago in Massachusetts. And this illustrates my point exactly. Because what we see are the participants in this supernatural event, and they believe it's benign, it's benevolent, and it's from God. I'm going to roll this for you now. Here we go. That's why this is important. That's why this is important. No one there is testing the spirits. No one is rebuking first, asking questions later. And that's very simple to do. The Lord rebuke you. That's all you say. If this is not from you, Lord, please shut it down. You stand up and say, the blood of the Lamb. You do what you got to do, but you stop it. No one's testing the spirits. Everyone's embracing it. Why? Because the events that happened at Fatima 100 years ago set a precedent to accept this as something from God. The events at Fatima 101 years ago, this October 13th, set a precedent, accepted it as, well, this has got to be from God. Not so fast, citizen. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. And I'm going to show you a clip here in a little bit, but before I do, this particular presentation, I want to drill in on what I call as a smoking gun. All right? Now, when I started researching Fatima, which is well over 15 years ago, I remember calling up a place in Canada, and I won't mention the name, and I asked the woman I was speaking to, I said, do you have any pictures of the so-called miracle of the sun? She said, Mr. Marzulli, I know we do. Give me a couple of weeks, call back, and I'll send them down to you. I said, great. A couple of weeks go by, I call up, and I asked this woman, well, have you found the pictures? There's a pause on the other end of the phone. And she says, Mr. Marzulli, the strangest thing, we looked everywhere, but we found pictures of the event and the people there before and after, but nothing of the miracle of the sun. But I always felt that somebody somewhere must have gotten the shot of the so-called miracle of the sun. I mean, photographers are trained to get the shot. That's what photographers do. They get the shot. So we're not sure how many photographers were in the field 101 years ago, but we know of one man who was there. His name is Joshua Benoglio. He took 12 photographs. And out of those 12, according to Jose here, 4 of them have problems. Now, Jose Machado is a professor of semiotics at a university in Portugal. And we interviewed him in the film. He comes on the film, and we have 4 expert witnesses who basically pummel Jose with questions about the photograph, which he reveals, which we reveal in the film. We also published Jose's book, Miracle of the Sun. It's a very small book. I wrote the foreword to it. Francisco Correa also wrote a second foreword to it. And the book is just very short, very small, but it's packed with information. And in my opinion, never before seen photographs of the so-called miracle of the sun. So this is a smoking gun to us. I've always wondered if there were photographs. Now, Jose had access to the sanctuary at Fatima. What I mean by that is he went in, he was able to go in to where all the records are kept in the Fatima archives in Fatima, Portugal. And he was able to handle, as you can see right here, the original glass plates. He's able to handle the original glass plates. And this is what he sees. And I'm going to show you, and you really can't see it here in this film, but the second clip, the second slide I'll show you will be able to, you'll be able to see it. In fact, let me just go there. There's the disc. This is how it looks in the original negative, and all we did was clean some of the artifacts from it. So this is the original photograph, and it's not been seen by the public before, and we published it. This has the smoking gun, literally. In the corner here, you can see smoke billowing up from the ground. Something is causing this fire, this smoke. The smoke travels up and then makes a right angle turn to where the disc is. The disc is directly over the apparition site, which is right there. Directly over the apparition site. So there's smoke on the ground, it's billowing up, it makes a right angle turn, and the disc stops right over the apparition site. In my opinion, this is a smoking gun. And what's incredible, the eyewitnesses in the field that day talk of looking up. This is on the handwritten record from 1917. Not 28, not 35 or the 1960s, 1917. right after or as close to the event as we possibly can get without being there, okay? And people, lawyers, doctors looked up and they state on the record, I looked up and saw a dull silver disc. A dull silver disc. So I think those of us who have been looking at this and participated in the film, Francisco, Joaquin Fernandez, Fina de Armada, and when Fina de Armada was alive, she actually sat down with Jose Machado and they were filmed together for an episode about Fatima. And that was supposed to be aired in Portugal. And the higher-ups put the kibosh on it and censored it, and it was never aired because they deemed the information too controversial. So Jose has come on the record with us in the film Fatima 2. We are excited by that. And again, I think it's an absolute smoking gun. And, what do we do with this? Again, a harbinger of deception, strange phenomena. That's exactly what I think took place. So Jose is in the sanctuary, and he's handling the glass plates, and he states on the record in his book and in our film that this object was intrinsic. It was in the film, in the glass negative, in the glass negative. It was not a smudge or a chemical burn or a scratch or any of that. It was actually in the glass plate. Why should you care? Because what it does is it takes the official narrative and stands it on its head. So when you purchase Fatima 2, what you will see is the fourth witness, Carolina Carriera, who Fina de Armada met and spoke to, and that testimony is in the film. She had that encounter with that blonde-haired being who spoke to her telepathically. You'll hear about the strange burns on the skin as the disc flew low over the crowd. I'm going to go back to here. The disc flew very low over this crowd, less than 100 feet. And people directly under that, their clothes were instantly dry as was the ground. You'll hear about the strange white fibers that fell on the crowd. You'll hear about the windshields exploding, car hoods popping up, gasoline exploding. So all this is in Fatima 2 and much, much more. And it really gives us an overview that what happened that day 100 years ago is a harbinger, a precursor of a deception that is ongoing in the world today.
The miracle of the sun. Now, I'd like to kind of debunk that a little bit because this didn't have anything at all to do with the sun. Okay, let's think about this logically. The Earth rotates around the sun. It's attracted by the sun's gravity. That's what causes the solar system to function. All the planets are pulled in by the sun's gravity. Now, if the sun moved, just think about it. It would cause chaos in the entire solar system. If the sun danced in the sky.
Okay, so this is this comes from a website where this particular person is saying that is one who refuses to face the truth. So again, we're not disputing that something happened, but it's what is in front of a sun causing it to pulse, just like in Fatima.
The Earth would probably be destroyed. All the life on the Earth would be destroyed just from the gravitational forces. The whole solar system would be in a disarray. So obviously, we're not talking about the sun really dancing in the sky the way many Catholics try to say it.
course, the music is just, that lends itself. This is what's dangerous to me about it. Is something supernatural happening? Absolutely. But what is it really? And who's behind it? Okay? And as you can see, all these people are completely embracing it. No one is testing the spirits. Look, all I'm saying is this. When you go back to the biblical prophetic narrative, it states very clearly that the dragon will come with all signs and lying wonders. How do we know this is not a lying sign and wonder? Just because something happens, just because something appears in front of us, doesn't mean it's benevolent. Doesn't mean it's from the God of the Bible. And why would that scripture be in there? Do not be deceived. Men faint from fear for what is coming upon the earth. Unless those days were shortened, no flesh would survive. The dragon, Satan, comes with all signs and lying wonders. And it just said many miraculous healings and conversions occurred. Okay, get this. When people are abducted by UFOs, sometimes they are healed. Sometimes the entities which abduct people against their will heal people. Heal people. And I'm going to talk about this just for a minute because I'm getting out of time here. The fallen angels are an entities, okay? Angels as entities, right? They have substance. They can manipulate space, time, matter, and energy. There are good ones and there are incredibly malevolent ones, incredibly evil ones. But they both have powers to do things. We're told in the biblical prophetic narrative that there's a pool of water. And when the angels stirred the water, people would go and dip into that water and they would be healed. This is in the time of Jesus. So something's going on there. And they knew that the good angel would come and do this. Well, the bad angel, who's malevolent, still has the power to heal. Do you understand that? Because that's what they're able to do. It's just that they have an agenda, a nefarious agenda. But they're able to do things that the good ones are able to because they're all angels. So let's move on. And you can see the reaction of the people. And everything is managed. The whole scene is being managed. People just accept that there is no discernment. And I realize, look, I'm going out on a limb here. A lot of people don't want to hear this. The problem is what happened at Fatima is being duplicated in modernity and is just accepted. And this is the problem. The fact that sun miracles, the spinning of the sun, we just talked about earlier that Mora and these ancient goddesses had the ability to spin the sun. Ancient goddesses had the ability to spin the sun. And Fatima is in Portugal, which is where all this was happening. This is an email. Hey, LA, here's an answer to the premise from your blog from yesterday, May 21st. Why all the pomp? It's because their bloodline desires to be worshipped. They are of their father. And that's may or may not be true, but I would certainly throw my hat in the ring with that. It's just amazing. So then he writes, this is from PD, he writes, keep up the great work, LA. I watched Fatima 2 with my buddy who attended the Branson conference with me last September. We loved it. Great research and photographic proof of the hoax that the world has been led to believe was something else entirely. God bless you, Peggy, and your efforts for the kingdom. And again, here's this clip from the end of Fatima 2. I need to show it to you. All these apparitions are happening in modernity.
What happened at Fatima is now in the far distant past. Over 100 years ago, events occurred which are still the subject of debate today. However, there have been numerous apparition sites since 1917. This segment will explore more of a strange phenomenon that is occurring in modernity. We will present real footage of so-called apparitions and ask you to determine what it is you are looking at. Can we really ascertain what these indistinct images of light are? You be the judge.
And I'll stop it there. How can we ascertain what these are? We can't. These are just amorphous blobs of light. That's all they are. Now, people will attribute a religious figure to it. Because of the blue here, they think it's Mary, but it's an amorphous blob of light. This is the problem. That Fatima and the events at Fatima 101 years ago set a precedent for all this to be accepted. And so now when it appears, everybody just accepts it. No one is testing the spirits. And frankly, folks, I find that incredibly dangerous. So here's the clip, folks. Check this out. These sun miracles and apparitions are all from the present day.
What happened at Fatima is now in the far distant past. Over 100 years ago, events occurred which are still the subject of debate today. However, there have been numerous apparition sites since 1917. This segment will explore more of a strange phenomenon that is occurring in modernity. We will present real footage of so-called apparitions and ask you to determine what it is you are looking at. Can we really ascertain what these indistinct images of light are? You be the judge.
I want to call your attention to the absolute hysteria that we're witnessing. Is something supernatural happening? Absolutely, all day long. Something supernatural. But where is the source behind it? And why should we accept it as something benevolent? If someone knocks on your door at 2:30 in the morning, do you just let them in? Oh yeah, come on into my house, no problem. How do you, no one in the right mind would ever do that, right? So why should we accept this just because we've been told that it's benevolent? You see where I'm going with this? This is what's so alarming about it to me. Fatima, 101 years ago, set a precedent, so now it's accepted. It's the norm. It's the accepted norm. Again, listen to the hysteria. Listen to the pandemonium surrounding. As look, they're seeing something supernatural. No one's disputing that. But who is sourcing it? Who is sourcing it? And just because this religious figure looks a little like Jesus, nonsense. Let me just stop it right here. So these are amorphous blobs of light. Like you're supposed to be Jesus, supposed to be Mary, and maybe Joseph and an angel. Amorphous blobs of light. How can we possibly ascertain what it is we're looking at? So what we see is we see people coming together at that last scene, the Coptic Church in Egypt, 2009, and Muslims and Christians together, and they're all celebrating this thing. This leads to the one-world religion. It's all, Satan comes with all signs and lying wonders. I'm not making this stuff up. Jesus warns us, in the end times there'll be deception. Folks, it's here. It's here. And I guarantee most of you have never seen those clips. Your pastors, for the most part, with all due respect, have never seen those clips. So they're ignorant. You're ignorant of what's going on. And this is what we do here. We go out and we try to expose the works of the enemy. We expose the works of the fallen one. We do it with our Nephilim books. We do it with Fatima 1 and Fatima 2. We do it with UFOs Are Real, the Watchman Chronicles. UFOs are real in their own words. We bring this to you so you can be armed and aware of the tenuous times that we find ourselves in. So when we were there, we discovered something, a dynamic in Portugal that most people aren't even aware of. Most people and researchers don't understand that there were serpent cults entrenched all throughout Portugal before the Christian era. So now we're back thousands of years, okay? Thousands of years, the pre-Christian era. And there are serpent cults that are there. And they are worshiping a goddess, and her name is Mora. This was done by Wesley Sangiorgi, and this is a depiction of the serpent cult with the goddess Mora. What most people don't understand, and this is a matter of the historical record, these goddesses that were worshipped, and the goddess Mora in particular, that were worshipped through Portugal, they had the ability to spin the sun. In other words, they could cause sun phenomenon. And this is exactly what happened at Fatima. But it's been dressed up, and that narrative has been carried through for most of the 100 years. The people made Fatima. And now these so-called sun miracles and apparitions are happening on a global level. I had one priest write me last week, and I won't mention the guy's name. And I everybody's entitled to their opinion. I get it. And basically it was, we need to pray for L.A. Marzulli because he's gone down a very dark road. So the problem I have, with all due respect to Father, to the priest, first of all, attack the data. So let me get this straight. According to the eyewitnesses that were there, when the flyby happened, okay, and this is the flyby. When the flyby happened, there were burns on people's skins. Cars spontaneously combusted. Cars stopped working. The hoods of automobiles flew open. The windshields shattered. And we've discussed all this before. But this is what's so important. This flyby is a reality. And it happened. Let me go back to that. So as this craft, this disc-like shaped craft, is coming over the crowd, all right? People are sopping wet. Suddenly, there's a heat exchange and their clothes dry. But along with that, there are burns on the skin. Now, does that sound something like the God of the Bible does? That, well, I'll dry your clothes, but you're going to get a bad sunburn too. You see where I'm going with this? Attack the evidence. Attack the data. And this is all in the handwritten testimonies from 1917. L.A., why do you care about Fatima? Why are you bagging on this? Let people just let it alone. Who cares? The reason why I bag on it is because, in my opinion, the events at Fatima set in motion phenomena that continue into modernity. And you'll see that in just a little bit. And what I find alarming about this is that people just accept it. They look up and they see the phenomena that's happening, whether it's an apparition, whether the sun is pulsing or spinning, whatever, and they embrace it. This is why, in my opinion, it's called a harbinger of deception, a precursor, a warning of what is coming. Look, we're told in the biblical prophetic narrative that in the last days, the fallen cherub, Satan, will come with all signs and lying wonders. What about that don't we get? I had another email from a gentleman who was saying, L.A., the problem I have is, you say Stella Matutina is the bright morning star, which refers to Lucifer. Now, what he's referring to is there's a section in both Fatima 1 and Fatima 2 in which I talk about the mediums. Again, most people don't know this. A group of mediums using an occult technique called automatic writing, two groups in two different places in Portugal, got together and through the technique of automatic writing had a message. And they published the message in the paper, O Seculo. And the message basically said on May 13th, something wondrous is going to happen in Portugal. That's what the message said. And it was signed Stella Matutina, the bright morning star. So this gentleman emails me and says, well, LA, that's the name for Mary. Mary now is the bright morning star she took that title away from Lucifer. And I'm just going like, well, okay, but when did this happen? In the 4th or 5th century? And this led to a discussion where I was accused of being anti-Catholic. And I said, look, I'm not being anti-anything. But in my opinion, we go back to the guidebook of the supernatural. We don't go back to the invention of men 300 or 400 years after the book of Revelation, which is probably written around, 90 AD? Something like that, roughly. People will debate that. Then the books are closed and sealed, and in 300, it becomes the canon which we have today. Okay, I get that. But making Mary of the Bible Stella Matutina is an invention by men. And frankly, I can't go with that. If you want to go with that, that's your prerogative. Again, in Fatima 1, there's a caveat right up front. And I say, look, millions of people go to Fatima every year. Millions of people encircle the Kaaba stone in Mecca. Millions of Hindus worship at Guru Puja. Millions of Buddhists worship at temples all over Asia. People have the right to believe what they want to believe. And we're not disparaging anyone's belief system. If you want to believe in Fatima, more, that it was Mary of the Bible, more power to you. But as a researcher and someone that's keenly aware of the prophetic and also the counterfeit of supernatural events, I'm looking at this through a whole different lens. I'm looking at this saying that, cars stopped working. Cars stopped working. Burns on the skin. Hoods of automobiles flew open. Windshields shattered. Gasoline spontaneously combusted. So what are we to think of this? What are we to think of this? And that's, to me, to my way of thinking, it's incredibly problematic. So it's like, yeah, Stella Matutina, after 300 or 400 years, it's given to Mary, but that's not what Scripture tells us. That title is reserved for the fallen cherub, the dragon, i.e. Satan. And the fact that it's automatic writing, see, again, they try to fudge in with Stella Matutina, but you're not addressing automatic writing, which is a greater crime. That's not from God. God doesn't use occult techniques to give messages to people. In automatic writing, when a person goes into a trance and then allows an entity to possess them, not fully, like the exorcist, but there is partial possession, not complete possession, but partial possession. They go down, the entity comes up, takes control of the hand, and the hand begins to write. This hand wrote right to left. Try that sometime. Wrote right to left. And the only way you could see it would be to hold it up in a mirror. And then signed it Stella Matutina. What we discovered, and most people don't know this, was that automobiles stopped working completely. The hoods of the automobiles flew open, windshields shattered, and gasoline spontaneously combustion. Chase, you know where I'm going with this. How is this analogous to the modern day UFO phenomenon?
Anybody can Google information like this because vehicles are often described as slowing down, stopping, pulling off the side of the road, even anomalies. There's a report of a police officer and his car was just destroyed. And the same thing, broken windshield. It's their Google search. They're so common. And I think that's why, LA, that all these decades, when we would look into the phenomena at Fatima, it read as a UFO report to me. So I kind of love the analogy of you digging into something religious, and then here I am on a UFO scientific end, and I saw a UFO event, and then when you dig into the facts of the witnesses, clearly, with what we know today and the descriptions of technology that we have, available, it's every day to us, we can better describe what's going on. But Fatima, 150% was UFO.
I agree. I mean, I'm not backing off on that. And again, without trying to disparage anyone's belief system, people can believe whatever they want to believe. We're not attacking people. If you want to believe that Fatima was what the status quo is, then more power to you. We're just saying these are the facts that we discovered. It's in the film, and we find it incredibly alarming because Fatima, and I'll get into this in the second half in my monologue again, that Fatima sets a precedence, Chase. In other words, everyone just believes that oh, this is some wonderful benevolent deal. What if it's not? What if it's a harbinger of deception? Now, there was another dynamic to this whole thing, and that was what people have labeled angel hair, because people just name things. We don't know what these strange fibers were, but they fell over the crowd, and they were white fibers, and we talk about this in the film too. We've got experts weighing in on it and discussing it, but you've been around this stuff, and you know what I'm talking about, the angel hair. Tell us how what happened at Fatima is exactly what happens here right now with the modern day UFO phenomenon.
We can find this material or the fibers dating way back to Nuremberg, the Nuremberg UFO picture, 1952 in France, and even today it was 2014 in Sri Lanka. This angel hair is, again, a known component that I wouldn't say it's very common, but it's certainly not rare. It does continue to develop. Now, of course, science wants to explain it as, they're floating dust particles and it interacts with atmospheric electricity. This is a reality, but if you can't duplicate that in a lab, that meeting of two particles, the electricity and the particles, make it a white fiber that floats like heavenly hair down to earth, then it's just a theory as much as anything else.
Sure.
The angel hair is shocking, and it also dissipates immediately. When you touch it, it disappears.
There was another component which we discovered in our 2-week tour of Fatima, and talking to a myriad of witnesses, all who present just incredible information in the film Fatima 2: Strange Phenomena. And one of those, which was very troubling to me, and again, most people have no idea that this occurred. There's a fourth witness, Infina D'Armato, who passed away in 2014. She's the researcher that went into the Fatima archives and read the original handwritten documents from 1917. And both of our films, Fatima 1, Fatima 2, all of our information is drawn, the source is from that 1917 handwritten documents by Father Fiera. So she's in there reading these, and she discovers that there's a fourth seer, a fourth witness who encounters a being just shortly before Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta do. And you weigh in on this in the film, and it's this being, the woman is named Carolina Carrera. She's 12, and she sees this blonde-haired figure. She's not sure it's a boy or a girl. It's very androgynous looking, and it's playing underneath the same holm oak tree that the apparition would later appear to the three children of Fatima. And it's communicating with Carolina telepathically. The mouth isn't moving, telepathic, voice to skull communications going on. Carolina is afraid. It's telling her, come here. And Carolina doesn't want to go. So she looked back. She's tending sheep, just like Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta did. And she's illiterate. And that's just the way things were back then. And she turns back to the sheep. They seem paralyzed. Then she looks back, and the figure's no longer there. She looks up, and the figure is floating above the treetop. Your thoughts on that?
That gave me chills, because the first time I ever heard any of this was, of course, your research finding the person who found the fourth witness. I just thought that was brilliant work, because who gets to read or gain that kind of information from Vatican sources, right? That's forbidden. And you were brilliant in getting this forward.
Thank you.
It chilled me, LA, because this is, again, anybody can Google and come up with 500 reports of these little blonde-haired children. They're more known as hybrids in the UFO community. They do, the telepathic, the unknown physics where they're able to float, but it's mostly the oddity of these children asking to interact with human children, and there's something so odd about them, it frightens the human children. So again, every step we take, there's just a lineage and a whole almost chart of it just never stops. And I love your quote. You always say this phenomena is burgeoning and this story is not going away. And that includes almost every element of Fatima.
And what I find alarming, and I'm going to get into this after I let you go, but thanks so much for coming on, is that this whole experience has set a precedent. And people believe that pulsing suns and amorphous-looking blobs of light are somehow benevolent. We don't know that. And I'm alarmed by
Right.
what I see. What came across my desk was another researcher who shot me an email, and we talked about this again in the film. We know that Portugal was steeped in ancient goddess worship, and the goddess there was Mora Encantada, the enchantress Mora. And these ancient goddesses were guardians of gateways and portals, and they had the ability to spin the sun. And so these sun miracles are happening now in modernity. It's not going away. And I honestly think it's setting people up for a deception. Chase, I'll give you the last word. And thanks so much for coming on. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there is no better time for this information to be revisited, especially as a harbinger. When you consider some of the physics that are happening now, when we have the person that led ATIP, the Pentagon's program, coming out saying things about portals and, this is bigger. This is bigger. This isn't just a interplanetary phenomena. It's bigger. And this is going to include supernatural. And we need to be prepared for that. And when you're having brilliant intelligence officers going there, this may be one of the reasons the government doesn't want to come out. But I agree with you, LA. It's already been confirmed. It's already done.
It's already done. It's
Now
just,
we need to, now it's about who are they and exactly what do they want. But we have a good idea.
Yeah, we do. Absolutely. And we'll get into that.